Welcome back. You're still watching Power Breakfast right here on Citizen TV. It is time for the news review with me, Fred Indimuli, and I had already introduced my panel this morning. It is what, and I know previously I've been accused of having manners. Yes, today we couldn't avoid it. Nelson Havi, lawyer, Pio Wandayi Guja, MP, Vincent Kimoso, policy analyst, and Caleb Kositani, MP, Soy constituency. I want to kick off with what happened, and this is the latest from the airport. Immigration officials at the JKIA last night blocked Siaya Senator James Orengo and businessman Jimmy Wanjigi from flying to Zimbabwe, where they're scheduled to attend the burial of former opposition leader Morgan Tsvangirai. The two missed their 9:20 p.m. flight after immigration officials withheld Jimmy Wanjigi's passport. And of course they claim that they are yet to receive that court order. The court had already lifted that suspension on the passports of at least 7 NASA leaders, including David Ndii, James Orengo, and Jimmy Wanjigi. The NASA leaders later rescheduled their flights to this morning and vowed to stay at the airport until then. Nelson Havi, you are a lawyer. This thing has been going on for some time. The immigration officials continue claiming they're yet to receive these court orders. I know one case in particular you've been handling is this one for Miguna Miguna, who has said he's coming back after the court actually declared his deportation null and void. Now, with this kind of behavior by immigration officials, the court had already declared itself in as far as the passports for these gentlemen are concerned. Do you think if Miguna Miguna was to land at JKIA today, he'd be allowed in?
Well, these people who claim to be in power have demonstrated for a fact that they do not obey the rule of law. Because how else will you explain the immigration officials' failure to allow Honorable Orengo and Jimmy Wanjigi and limited exit out of the country? You see, the law is quite clear. A citizen of Kenya is entitled to unrestricted rights of entry and access into the Republic of Kenya. Now, if anything is to go by, we are seeing a pattern where there is a clear determination by the executive to disobey all court orders. Why this persistent determination I cannot understand, because the biggest beneficiary of law and order is he whosoever is in power. Because in a capitalist system of this kind, the law is intended to help the big man. So that they need to realize the more they continue perpetuating this impunity, the more they're breaking the orderly society we live in.
And it's the same reason why you have that yellow ribbon on this morning.
Yes, and we'll continue donning this yellow ribbon until my friends, including my MP here from Soy, advise their principals to obey court order. But back to your question, the court has cleared the way for Miguna Miguna to come back. And we expect, as soon as we get a judgment on Friday on the modalities of these entries, because we want the Kenya National Human Rights Commission to facilitate. We don't want a situation whereby Miguna will jet in and then they kidnap him from the airport. Then he disappears. We're not able to see him again. So as to whether or not he can come, he can come. But we want a situation whereby his security is guaranteed. We're living in very treacherous times. Miguna can come here, and all of a sudden these despots can just kidnap him and disappears forever. Yes. We don't want a situation like that.
Even the claim by immigration officials that they're yet to see the court order, they could claim the same thing about Miguna Miguna. They don't have any order declaring that deportation null and void. How do you handle such issues when the state officials just say, okay, we've not seen that order?
Well, these state officials manifest what we say the end of times. They'll have ears, they will not hear. They'll have eyes, they will not see. Because you know there is a court order. Everybody knows there's a court order. It's been served upon them. It's been publicized. And then it must be understood, this game that these state officers keep on playing must end, because government is one entity. The moment an order is served upon your office, you are deemed to have knowledge of that order. And it will not lie in their mouth to put the defense that, look, I was at the airport, I was not in the office, it was served in my office. These people will meet the full force of the law, and they're going to lose their offices. Yesterday we saw Joseph Boynet and George Kinoti complaining in an affidavit they risk losing their jobs because of an order finding them guilty of contempt. They need to understand these jobs do not belong to them. They are paid out of taxpayers' money. Yes. It's their responsibility to serve Kenyans. And for as long as we need to maintain law and order, it's incumbent upon them to do the right thing, no matter high command, which they always claim, orders from above. When it really rests on you, orders from above will not assist.
And talking about orders from above, when Deputy President William Ruto was in Gishu on Sunday at a church service, he was very clear, Bwana Kositany. He said, none of us is above the law, that everyone, including the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, and the opposition, all state officers should abide by the Constitution. What you're seeing happening with this blatant disobedience of court orders is not what the Deputy President said. Should we say that because according to some of the NASA leaders, these orders to detain passports, to ignore court orders, are coming straight from the top? Do you agree?
Well, I don't know whether you have any evidence that we've disobeyed any court order, because from what I know about the law is once you are served with a court order, that is when you abide by the said service, and I think Wakili Harvey here has just mentioned that here. We have not disobeyed any court order. As the executive, we have not disobeyed any court order. We are law-abiding. If there is a team that has very openly, very obviously, and without any regard for the law, disobeyed court order, it is the NASA coalition. They took us to court after that we won the elections on 28th. The court nullified the presidential election and ordered that another one be held within 90 days. We abided by that law as Jubilee. We went for an election. They boycotted. They went to court. The court ruled that the election was President Uhuru and Deputy President William Ruto were validly elected. We went for a swearing in, and they still say there is no government. Who is in contempt of court here?
But when it comes to state officials, the Immigration Department falls directly under the executive, of course. When they say that some of these court orders which are out there in the public, that they're yet to receive them, so therefore...
yeah, they have to receive them. There is no way you can get a court order through the newspaper or through the electronic media. It has to be physically served. And maybe that's the way there's a weakness in the law. I mean, maybe those are things that the lawyers need to advise us on how to bridge that gap. But unless you're physically served, then it's just hearsay.
But Pio and I were talking about lawyers here. Senator James Orengo, he should be aware that, yes, even such orders as to allow him to travel, probably he expected this kind of treatment at the airport last night.
No, firstly, Fred, you must understand that what happened at the airport yesterday is not an isolated matter. Basically within a pattern, it falls within a pattern of the disobedience to lawful court orders that has taken root, unfortunately, in this country in the last couple of months. Fred, as we speak, I'm a victim of this culture of impunity. Recall that the court ordered that my security alongside my other colleagues be reinstated. As I'm speaking to you, I've got no security.
And that order was
despite a live court order, directing the police to provide me with security. But that aside, what I want to say about this disobedience to lawful court orders is that those officers, those state officers, junior or senior, who continue to disobey these court orders on apparent instructions from political people, politicians, they should be well alive to the fact that in the fullness of time they will be held to account. Ultimately, and it won't take long, I can tell you. So they should be forewarned that they could be thinking perhaps that they are insulated against the dictates of the law because of perceived protection from these political operators. But ultimately they will have to pay the price. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bwana Kimosop, as Bwana Wandai says, some of these state officers may be acting on the whims of political leaders, but when it comes to actually calling people to account, political leaders will not be called to account for disobeying court orders. It is down to the state officers themselves. Do they realize what kind of position they're placing themselves in, even within the police, when you disobey a court order because a politician says this or the other?
I think we need to appreciate the Constitution Article 10.2 talks about national values. And of the 17, one of them is the rule of law. When we approved the constitutional dispensation in 2010, we commit ourselves that we will be a law-abiding citizen. one of the requirements of the law is really complying with court orders. So there is no option about complying with court orders, whether they are favorable or not favorable. That should be clear. I want to give an example of a former PS during the Goldenberg period. And what he used to do is that he would get political instructions for these transactions to be paid, and it was actually in public purview when the commission was investigating. And what he would do, name withheld, is that he would go back and write a memo back to the minister, kindly confirm if the following instructions is what you actually indicated. No politician wanted to confirm, because they cannot. Some of the smartest animals or people we have in this country or even in the world are politicians. They live tomorrow while the people are yesterday. So I think it is important to appreciate that we might be in a convenient political period whereby at times it might look good to comply with certain or not to comply with others. But ultimately when the rubber hits the road, it is individuals, including politicians. So at times it is good to appreciate that the rule of law is for everybody, not just and not when it's not convenient for you or not. So I think it is important, even including the media, because at times as we have had instances whereby even the media does not comply with court orders. So let's have this conversation whereby we build a country that is guided by the law, irrespective, because it can be very popular to say so and so. It can be very popular in a political period whereby it is being used to advance short-term political interest. But ultimately, what Maraga told us is that the greatness of a country is fidelity to the rule of law, fidelity to the Constitution, adherence to the rule of law, and above all, the fear of God.
And that's the same thing the Deputy President said on Sunday while attending a church service in Uasin Gishu, that none of us is above the law, that everyone must obey the Constitution, from the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, and even the opposition. And he was clear, and he said state officers must obey the